Good evening, everyone. It's Steve Lookner with Right Side Broadcasting. I was just waiting for the long, inevitable YouTube black screen to go away so you could actually see me. We are coming to you tonight with a news alert. This is some news that happened a little earlier this afternoon, but because YouTube was having problems with all of their platform, we delayed our stream a little bit so those of you who do watch us on YouTube could watch us as well. So hello to everybody watching on all of our platforms. This news is that Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty, she's a Democrat from Connecticut. She has announced she will not run for re-election in 2018. Last week, a scandal arose for Congresswoman Esty, which arose around her treatment of allegations about her chief of staff abusing a female staffer. So we're going to get into the details of this, but what basically happened is Congresswoman Esty's former chief of staff called up a female staffer in her office. They had been casually dating. He called her up and threatened to kill her. Subsequently, the female staffer informed Congresswoman Esty that this male chief of staff had also physically abused her. That's at least what the female staffer said. And when Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty found this out, rather than taking immediate action, she allowed the chief of staff to work in the office for 3 more months. And then, when the chief of staff left the office, Elizabeth Esty actually gave him a positive job recommendation letter. And I believe she signed a non-disclosure agreement, which didn't... I have to get the details on that, but there was some sort of non-disclosure agreement signed where I think she agreed not to talk about it, what had happened. But let me look at that detail, and I'm going to get you the exact details here. But again, she did not. To sum up what happened, her chief of staff called up another female staffer in her office, threatened to kill her. They had been dating. And also the female staffer accused the chief of staff to Congresswoman Esty of physical abuse. And rather than taking immediate action, she let the male chief of staff stay on for 3 more months and wrote him a positive job recommendation letter. So there's been this scandal for the last few days around Congresswoman Esty. A number of people had called for her to resign. The biggest Connecticut paper, Hartford Courant, I got to remember to get that editorial up here. I want to show you. They called for her to resign. A number of people in Congress called for her to resign. She initially refused to resign, but today she announced that she's not going to immediately resign, but she's not going to run for re-election in 2018. So in this seat, it leans Democrat, but it may be a competitive seat. I think Hillary only won this seat, Hillary Clinton, by 5 points in 2016, so it could be a competitive seat. So we're going to talk about this story. We're going to tell you some of the details about this story. And also we're going to get your comments. So if you have comments on this story, you can write to me. I'll read your comments on the air. At Lookner, at Lookner on Twitter. Write to me there. Let me make sure the sound is working okay. It could be a competitive... No, it is working okay. And thank you to all our moderators. So in the YouTube chat room, we have Lynn Jean and Real Frank and Guinevere and JC. They're all there. And Common Sense and Gleno on the website. And hello to everybody watching on Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter tonight. We're on all those places. So what I first want to do is, because I know some people out there probably aren't familiar with the background of this story. I want to first just explain the background of this story, the details about what happened, and what led to this announcement today from Congresswoman Esty of Connecticut that she will not run for re-election in the fall. So here is the big article. Well, I guess originally there was an article in a Connecticut paper, but an article that really publicized this whole thing was this article from the Washington Post that came out March 29th. That is last, as I go to March, last Thursday this article came out. And it was written by Elise Viebeck in the Washington Post. And as you can see, It says Connecticut Congresswoman kept aide on staff for 3 months after she learned of threat allegation. So, by the way, I believe he acknowledges making the threat about killing her. I don't think that's an allegation any longer. But anyways, let me look into this. So let's just summarize the details of this story. The threat, as the Washington Post article says, the threat from Representative Elizabeth Esty's chief of staff arrived in a voicemail. And the voicemail he left for a female staffer was, "You better effing reply to me or I will effing kill you," Tony Baker said in the May 5th, 2016 recording left for Anna Cain, a former Esty aide Baker had once dated. Now, there was a recording. So Cain, the woman, female staffer, she actually had a recording of this, and she gave her a recording of this to the Washington Post and the police. And note that she filed a report for felony threats, and she did get a 12-month restraining order against the chief of staff. So she has a recording of this threat. She talked to the police, and she did get a 12-month restraining order against the chief of staff. And by the way, just to show you a couple pictures here. The woman, Anna Cain, is on the right there. She is the female staffer who was harassed who had this threat made to her against her and said she was harassed by the Elizabeth Esty's chief of staff. So that's Anna Cain. And then the chief of staff, Tony Baker, there's some pictures of him down here. The former chief of staff. Hold on. That's Tony Baker right there, just so you have a couple pictures there. Okay, let's keep going on the details of this. So, again, in 2016, former Chief of Staff Baker called up Anna Cain and left a voicemail threatening to kill her. Now, after Esty found out about this episode within a week. So Esty found out about this threatening voicemail in early May 2016. And then the article says, and this is where we start getting into the bad publicity for Esty, rather than firing or suspending Baker, the Congresswoman consulted her personal attorneys and advisors, she said. She also spoke to Anna Cain on May 11th email show. Cain said she provided detailed allegations that Baker had punched, berated, and sexually harassed her in Esty's Capitol Hill office throughout 2014 while she worked as Esty's senior advisor. So again, Anna Cain, in addition to providing this voicemail recording, having this voicemail recording of Baker threatening her life, she also provided detailed allegations to Congresswoman Esty that this former chief of staff Baker had punched, berated, and sexually harassed her in the office, in the Congresswoman's office. So what did she do? Well, she didn't fire or suspend him. She enlisted a friend, former Chief of Staff Julie Sweet, to look into Baker's past behavior. And Baker did not leave the office for 3 months. By his last day on August 12th, according to documents Esty provided to the Washington Post, he and Esty had co-written a positive recommendation letter he could use in a job search. And also, they had both signed a legal document preventing her from disparaging him or discussing why he left. Baker went on to work for Sandy Hook Promise, the gun control group created in the 2012 shooting in Esty's district. He was dismissed from the group this week after the Washington Post contacted him. And this whole thing was first reported last Thursday by the Connecticut Post. So again, let's just summarize the details here. Is it Ted Baker? Am I getting that right? I know it was Anna Cain. Hold on. Ted Baker? No, it's not Ted Baker. What's Baker's name? Tony Baker, I'm sorry. All right, so Tony Baker was Congresswoman Esty's chief of staff. She's a Democrat from Connecticut. Another person who worked in her office was her aide, Anna Cain. So they both worked in the office at the same time. They were dating casually at some point when they were working in the office. However, in May 2016, Tony Baker left a message for Elizabeth Esty saying, "You better effing reply to me or I will effing kill you." I think I read in a different article, he called her 50 times that day. I'm going to try to find that elsewhere again, but I had just read that before he came on the air that he called her 50 times that day. That was one report I saw. So he left a message threatening to kill her. So Congresswoman Esty finds out about this because the female staffer it doesn't say how. It just says the Congresswoman found out about this. But at the same time, remember that also the female staffer contacted the police. She got a 12-month restraining order after this. And the Congresswoman finds out about all of this. And then she also finds out the female staffer provides the Congresswoman detailed allegations that back in 2014, this chief of staff, Tony Baker, punched, berated, and sexually harassed her in the Congresswoman's office throughout 2014. And what does the Congresswoman do? Well, she doesn't suspend or fire him. He doesn't leave for 3 months. And then after 3 months, the Congresswoman and Tony Baker, who's accused of all this stuff, they co-write a positive job recommendation letter for him to use in a job search. He gets a job in her district, and the Congresswoman, had signed a legal document preventing her from speaking badly of Tony Baker or even discussing why he left. So you can see, I think, why there would be a scandal over this. Now, initially, Congresswoman Esty said she was not going to step down or even not run for re-election, but today she changed her mind and said she won't run for re-election. I want to just show you a couple more of the details from this background here, but we're going to take your comments on the air as well. So if you have comments on this story, write to me on Twitter, @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Okay, so let me just keep going and show you some of the other details about the backstory about this whole thing. Now, Esty, in this first article, so she had told the Washington Post last week, she said she dealt with the situation poorly. Oh, and also, get this. So Tony Baker, the chief of staff, got $5,000 in severance from Congresswoman Esty's office, and that's taxpayer-funded money. And I know it's taxpayer-funded because Congresswoman Esty said she plans to reimburse the U.S. Treasury for what she described as the roughly $5,000 severance Baker received from her office. She said she also plans how to improve. She said last week she plans to improve how she runs her office. Now, this was before she said she wasn't going to run for re-election. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention from this article. Now, the Congresswoman was among the Democrats who called on John Conyers to resign after he was accused last fall of sexually harassing female staff members. And she said last November, for too long the culture in Washington has accepted entirely unacceptable behavior. She said that needs to change, period. And this was a year and a half after this whole thing happened with her chief of staff, and she let the guy stay on for 3 months and then wrote him a positive job recommendation letter. Now, it says also here, the Congresswoman provided the Washington Post with a copy of her signed agreement with the chief of staff, who's accused of all this stuff. And the signed agreement included multiple secrecy provisions, a draft job recommendation letter, and his severance terms. Now, also, there's this whole thing where the Congresswoman blamed the Office of House Employment Counsel. She said she was pressured by the Office of House Employment Counsel, that's the House of Representatives, to sign a non-disclosure agreement, a process that she said delayed Baker's departure. She said she was working within a system that appeared designed to shield members who had misbehaved, not those trying to dismiss problematic aides. So if you remember, we've seen a number of Congress people get in trouble for sexual harassment allegations over the last year or so, and it's come out through different reporting. I know the Daily Beast did a bunch of reporting on this. That there's this system in place in Congress that seems designed to deal with harassment allegations in a way that they don't get publicized. So, and I haven't researched. I mean, I remember being fluent with all this stuff like last year when this happened, and I haven't looked at it lately. But I remember reading about stuff where there's this whole process and it takes a long time, and there's and they try to get the people who are accusing Congress people of harassment, they try to get them into mediation, and they really encourage non-disclosure agreements. And so there have been numerous cases where taxpayer money was used to pay off people who had accused congressmen, it's basically before this, I think it was all men, congressmen, of harassment, of sexual harassment. And they also, so they were, the taxpayer money was used to pay off these accusers, and also they were, I want to say encouraged or made or something about the process strongly encouraged them to sign these non-disclosure agreements. So there's this system in place that seems to be designed in part to not have these sexual harassment allegations and taxpayer-funded payoffs of accusers publicized. And so Congresswoman Esty, I guess, is somehow saying that this system in place pressured her to sign this non-disclosure agreement. It's not fully explained here. She says, it felt wrong to me when I'm reading the documents in these drafts. It kept going through my mind. This is not right. This is not This is not what happened. And then, so she said she was pressured by the Office of House Employment Counsel. The lead counsel of the Office of House Employment Counsel declined to comment. She referred questions to the committee on to the Committee on House Administration, and then the committee said, "I don't want to get into all this, but I'll let you, if you want to read about all the who denies responsibility in the statements they made, fine." But at a certain point, Congresswoman Esty agreed to all this stuff, so I would think the blame ultimately rests on her. And just so you know, background, according to both sides, the female and male, Kane and Baker, they met in Esty's office following her election. Excuse me. Sorry. In 2012, and they dated casually in 2013 before they were both promoted. All of a sudden, my throat just got really dry. I was sick last week, and I thought I was all better, but maybe my throat is not all better. I'll be okay. I might have to get some more water. Now, as I mentioned before, this female staffer had in 2014 got a restraining order from the police, a 12-month restraining order on this male chief of staff. And according to her petition for a restraining order, Baker punched her in the back and repeatedly screamed at her in Esty's office while threatening to retaliate professionally if she reported his behavior. I got to get some more water. All right, I apologize. I didn't know I was gonna have this thing from my throat. Give me 1 sec, guys. Let me just get my bottle of water, and I'll be back in 10 seconds with a bottle of water, so I can not be coughing the whole time. Hold on 1 sec. I apologize. Wow, that was a whole thing. All right. So, anyways, that's some background on this story, and I'd love to hear from you. There's a little more stuff I want to discuss. I want to discuss the statements that Esty made first, right after she was accused of this, or all these details came out, and some people called for her to resign, and then today what her statement said. But I'd love to hear what you think about this whole story. What do you think? Write to me on Twitter @Lookner. at LOOKNER. And also, thanks again to our moderators who are moderating the chat room. And if you like that we're covering this story, and I'm guessing you'll see a lot more coverage here than you will in the mainstream media because they're so focused on Trump all the time. I know actually this kind of broke around like 4:30 p.m. And as I mentioned, or maybe even a little later, but as I mentioned, we didn't come on the air initially because YouTube was having some system-wide issues, and we wanted to make sure those got solved so our YouTube viewers could watch the broadcast. But I was in my car, so I went and grabbed something to eat, and around 5 I was in my car, and I said, you know what I'll do is I'll turn on my satellite radio to the news channels at 5 p.m. because they might have some information on this because it's a big story. And of course I turned on top of the hour, all the news channels, MSNBC, Fox, and like CNN, and they were all just covering Trump stuff or Roger Stone, Robert Mueller stuff, and it was just like, ugh. So we wanted to do full coverage of this, but if you like that we're doing coverage of this, and we don't just obsess on the same 3 Trump stories all day, 24 hours a day. We would ask you to please consider donating because we relied on you to stay on the air. We are a viewer-supported network. Your donations are what keeps us on the air. So if you like having an alternative to the mainstream media, you can donate by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat. Click on the $sign, the little $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Ernie Bass says you can get your real news here. Thank you, Ernie Bass 3 in the Periscope chat room. Let me see if anybody's written to me so far about this, if you have any comments yet on this story. Our viewer, Reagan Better, wanted me to read this message from the NRCC. National Republican, something committee, competitiveness committee. Hang on, National Republican Congressional Committee. There you go. So this is what they said about Elizabeth Esty. They said, today is a sad day for Connecticut's 5th District. Elizabeth Esty's cover-up over her staffer's domestic violence scandal was as reprehensible as it was morally bankrupt. The NRCC is ready to win this competitive seat this fall. Democrats won't be able to distance themselves from the stain Esty left on their brand. That's from the NRCC. James Brownson asked me a question which I will not be able to answer. He says, so what exactly did Congresswoman Esty accomplish during her term, and what is your opinion on her infamous Nigger Gate epidemic she led for consumer rights on airline seat space? Well, I have to be honest, I know nothing about her campaign for airline seat space, consumer rights, and I really know nothing about what she accomplished during her term. I am not knowledgeable about Congresswoman Esty's term, so I can't answer your question. Sorry. Hey, we got another black screen on YouTube. Wonderful. Hey, it's great. So it seems like we get these all the time now because they won't fix it. But real quick, I just want to explain to you. I end up having to do this once every broadcast. Hey, people in the chat room, let me know when this... let me know when you're not seeing the black screen anymore. There, we're back. So, just so you know, again, I encourage you to do this, even though they never fix it. If you want to complain about the black screen you're watching on YouTube, pause it on the black screen, or you can rewind back to the black screen. Right-click, click on Troubleshoot Playback Issue, and you can say whatever you want. A form comes up, you can just fill it out. I am so sick of your guys' BS with these stupid black screens on right side videos. Why can't you morons fix this? And then you can just click send. It's very easy. They probably just throw them in the trash, but anyways. So do that if you'd like. Garrett writes in, what happened with the female staffer after this? Did she resign or was she paid for damages? That's a good question, Garrett. Garrett wants to know the female staffer, what happened to her? Let's see. Well, I know she's working as a political consultant. So Heavy has this article about her. And I think it says she's working for a political consultant. She's working as a political consultant. Let me see. I read that somewhere today. Let's see. Is it here? Here it goes. Kane, a New York native and St. Joseph's University grad, is now working for a political consulting firm. She has been at the firm since 2015. So when she got that threatening phone call in 2016, she had already left the office. But the chief of staff at the time was Tony Baker. He was still working for Esty at the time. So she left the office in 2014 until she left the Congresswoman's office in 2015. Now, I don't know what's going on, if anything else has happened to her. Like, you had asked Garrett, did she resign or was she paid for damages? Well, I don't know. I didn't hear she was fired, so maybe I would assume she left voluntarily. But in terms of her paid for damages, well, I'm guessing there was no voluntary payment and she would need to sue if she wanted to recover damages. I'm not aware of any lawsuit that she filed. I don't know if she will file one about the way she was treated. I don't know. But a good question. James Brownson sent me a very naughty tweet that I can't even read. That's not nice, James. Okay, I want to show you Congresswoman Esty, what she said. So if you look at her Twitter account, aside from the pinned tweet from January 16th, she's only tweeted twice in the last week. And one was today announcing she wasn't running, and one was last week when this story came out. Now, this was her response she came out with last week when this whole story came out about her. And it's interesting, if you actually read through the response, she never mentions like the job recommendation she wrote for the guy. She says, in the spring of 2016, I was horrified and angry to learn that a promising, dedicated former employee of mine was harassed and harmed by my now former chief of staff. I'm sorry that I failed to protect her and provide her with a safe and respectful work environment that every employee deserves. I'm sorry that I hurt her friends, blah, 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 blah. To address the immediate crisis, I demanded counseling for my offended chief of staff, and I launched an internal review of management policy, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, through the review process, I learned that the threat of violence was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of behavior that victimized many of the women on staff. That's interesting. Many of the women on her staff. At which point I hired a new chief of staff. So, and then she says, to the survivors and anyone else on my team who was hurt, I'm sorry. But she never says, like, she's writing this whole thing about how sorry she is. She never says, why did she never even addresses the fact that she wrote the guy a good job recommendation letter, and the office gave him a severance package, and she signed an NDA which prohibited her from ever speaking badly about the guy or talking about why he'd left. So she doesn't address any of that here. This is the one that came out last Thursday, which I found interesting. And then today, this was her post today where she announced that she was stepping down and she's not going to run for re-election in the fall. And she still didn't specifically say in this statement anything about why she gave the guy a job recommendation. She says, from being room parent in a first-grade classroom to serving on the library board, town council, state house, and U.S. Congress. I went into public service to fight for equality, justice, and fairness. It is one of the greatest honors of my life that the people of Connecticut's 5th District elected me to represent them in Congress. However, I've determined that it is in the best interest of my constituents and my family to end my time in Congress at the end of this year and not seek re-election. Too many women have been harmed by harassment in the workplace in the terrible situation in my office. So again, she's saying multiple women have been harassed in her office. I could have and should have done better. To the survivor, I want to express my strongest apology for letting you down. In Congress and workplaces across the country, we need stronger workplace protections and to provide employees with a platform to raise concerns, address problems, and work to reduce and eliminate such occurrences in the first place. In my final months in Congress, I will have used my power to fight for action and meaningful change. I'm proud of the work I've done in Congress, fighting for what's best for Connecticut, blah, 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 blah. So, again, never here tries to explain why, or even acknowledge. She doesn't acknowledge in this message that she wrote the guy a good job recommendation letter, or that she let him stay on for 3 months and extra after she heard about all this stuff, or that she signed a non-disclosure agreement which prevented her from saying anything bad about him. Talking about why he left. So it's again, it's a little odd to me. And now maybe she's addressed it somewhere else. I have not seen any interviews where she's addressed it, but I would think that those are some of the questions that. Some of the big questions that her constituents would want answered. Well, why did you do this? And she never gives an explanation for that. And she doesn't even acknowledge it. She literally doesn't bring it up. And she literally, in both these statements, doesn't even bring up the specific things people were upset about. So she will not be running this fall. What is this here? This was sent to me by John. John wrote me and said he sent me this casualty list from the current Congress, and these are people retiring and seeking other office. I believe the number is up to like 58 now. Oh, this seems to be higher, but I don't know. I read something else at 58. But anyways, this is available on the United States House of Representatives press gallery if you want to see who will not be running. Oh, maybe this includes senators as well? Yeah, that's the difference. So this includes Senate and it includes governors? I'm so confused. Also list those who resigned or died. Anyways. So you can go to the United States House of Representatives press gallery if you want to see that. Okay, so if you have comments on the story, we'd like to hear from you. Give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Let me know what you're thinking about this. Ireland's pacifist wrote to me, I sent a bunch of stuff to YouTube. I think you mean complaints to YouTube. And I was getting ignored or automated responses until a popular YouTube creator gave me an email to use. And they basically told me to get lost and it's a private email for partners or some BS and told me not to email them back. Now, I'm not surprised, Ireland's pacifist. Eric writes in on our YouTube chat, drain the swamp. Oh, I know what I'll show you. I'll show you a tweet I saw about this House district. Josh Barrow, who's a senior editor at Business Insider, he says of the district that Elizabeth Esty represents, this is theoretically a competitive district. Democrat +2. In general, those sorts of districts are thought to be safe for the Democrats this year, but Democrats have bigger image problems in Connecticut than in most states. I've heard the governor of Connecticut is not very popular, and he's a Democrat, and that could hurt whatever Democrat runs for this seat. All right, I'm giving a last call here, last call for comments. Write to me on Twitter at Lookner with your comments. Thanks again, moderators JC, Guinevere, Real Frank, Lynn Jean, and Common Sense and Gluno on the website. Hey, I'm going to see what people are saying in the Facebook chat room while I have a second. See if I can do this without it being very loud. Hey, I'm going to see what people oh, no, it always does this. All right, let's try this again. Juanita Whitaker in the Facebook chat says, so many are getting out before the swamp gets drained. LOL. Martin Jacob says, this disgusting animal, type of animal, needs to lose her pension and benefits. Chris Merritt in the Facebook chat says, stop using taxpayer money to pay off offenders of misbehavior of any kind. Karen Lovejoy says, busted and she covered up for him means she's guilty of something too she's trying to hide. Now, Karen, I'm not aware of anything she's guilty of, but it's an interesting theory you have. See if there are any more comments here. Okay, I think I've gotten to all your comments. So I think someone in the chat room said Steve had Chef Maga said Steve has shiny shirts. You know, this shirt actually isn't as shiny as it looks. It's just the way the lighting is. Certain times things look shinier, and there's no way with the lighting set up here I can really get around that. So I apologize for the shirt shininess. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up this stream now. If there is other big news tonight, we will come on the air and cover it for you. But let me repeat, we are viewer supported. Your donations allow us to be on the air. Without your support, we can't stay on the air. So if you like our broadcast, please consider donating. Go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $ at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Eventually, you're going to be able to donate directly to us on Periscope, but there needs to be a couple things fixed before you can do that. There's technical reasons why you can't do that on our broadcast right now. Also, I will be posting on my Twitter, as usual, breaking news. You can follow me on Twitter at Lookner. And you can subscribe and follow us on all of our platforms, Facebook Right Side Broadcasting, Periscope RSBN TV, Twitter at RSB Network, and YouTube Right Side Broadcasting, and click the notifications bell when you subscribe so you can get notified half the time or less. A few people have been messaging me about the caravan of immigrants. I'm not going to comment on that right now because we try to keep if you've watched me before, you know we try to keep these streams single topic. But if there's big doings with that, we'll keep an eye out on it. So we'll watch that and all the other stories as well. But we're going to wrap this up right now. So hope you guys all have a great night. We appreciate all of you watching on our various platforms. And we'll keep coming on and bringing you the news. Beautiful day today in the Atlanta area. I hope it's nice weather where you are. Gorgeous today. So thank you for saying thank you in the chat room. Thank you, Chef Maga, and Remain Faithful, and Light Switch, and let's see here. Oh, Family Guy fan in our YouTube chat says he lives in the Connecticut 4th District, which I think is the one Esty is from. Thank you, Propus. Thank you, PJ. Thank you, Lynn Vavion, DM, Jason Thornton, History B, Jessica Pearson, Brian Last, DM, John K. Swoosh says it's 82 in North Carolina. Very nice. Very nice. Even I think it was 85 here today. Thank you, Buzzy Ann on Periscope. John Westmoreland says he just showed up. Well, John, you'll have to rewind the broadcast, John. It's YouTube, and you can do that. Thank you, Beamer Boy. Thank you, Swoosh. Sandra says, I look tired. You know, Sandra, I'm not tired at all, actually. The problem is when I do these broadcasts, especially without my glasses, the lights here are very bright. That's what we have to do we have to light it very bright. And when that happens, I believe I squint a little bit, not involuntarily, because these lights are right near me and they're very bright. So I am not tired in the least. Hello, Christoph Piankowski on Facebook and Maynard Heiler. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Chris Merritt, as well, for saying those nice words. Brian Lass says it's 80 in Florida. Ocala, I believe it's. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Ocala. Thank you, R.U. Handy. Maureen Davis, you can rewind the stream and watch. All right, we're wrapping this up. Thank you all for joining us. This has been our coverage of this story on Right Side Broadcasting, and we will have more news coverage for you as the news warrants. For now, I am Steve Lookner. From all of us here at Right Side Broadcasting, have a great night, and we will see you soon.